with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to this point to Richard and Adam. And gentlemen, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Rodney. Truly appreciate the introduction and the time. As Rodney said, today we're going to talk to you about AI in action for JDE. You know, this is not only a practical guide, it's a glimpse into some of the things you could do today, some of the things you'll be able to do in the future, and most importantly, some of the pitfalls and blocks that you don't want to fall into as you begin the journey. So I'll be presenting along with our CEO, Adam, as Rodney said. Adam will move you through a very interesting demo. And also, again, some insights in some of the things, believe it or not, you might be able to do today to really start harnessing the energy of AI. For our agenda, we're going to go over, you know, kind of some of the secrets to being ready for AI, but also some of the secrets to getting ready for AI, particularly with the JDE. We'll give you an insight into, you know, how AI can be used across different personas. Whether it's a consumer, whether it's an analyst, or whether it's a developer, and how you could use AI in many different ways, not just with coding, but maybe with agentic, maybe with just asking AI some simple questions to start. And then we'll give you kind of a glimpse into the future of AI and data science. Hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for questions. We love your questions, so please send them in. And without further ado, we're going to jump in. So, you know, I think the most important piece is, you know, before we jump into AI and machine learning, what is it? So according to ChatGPT, AI is a broad concept of creating machines that can perform human-like tasks, right? So these tasks are basically performed that would normally require human intelligence. So that's what AI is. It's really optimization. But a lot of the conversation today will be across the little circle in the middle called machine learning. So what ChatGPT says is machine learning is a specific subset of AI that allows systems to learn from data without being explicitly programmed. So the key today, and what we're going to have a lot of focuses on, is the ability to learn from data, right? And the more that we can learn from our data, the better decisions we'll be able to make, the more accurate decisions we'll be able to make, and the faster we'll be able to move. We all know there's a lot of data in JDE, but how we harness it, that is something we're really going to focus on today. So I think the most important piece to start off with is, before we begin our AI journey, it all starts with one thing. It starts with the data. So we know the data that we have in JDE today, but is that enough for our AI journey? Is that enough, and is it broad enough to answer the questions we need? Because right now, a lot of that data sits in different applications, different solutions. Maybe HR or payroll sits in a different solution. Maybe we want to connect our CRM data. Maybe we want to build in some supply chain efficiencies. So before you begin your journey, understand the data, the solutions, and the applications that you want to connect. And what are those data sets within those applications that we really need to learn from? Or think about the most complex query you could ever create. Where does all that data come from that needs to be in the query? So that's number one, is understanding the diversity of the data that needs to be brought in. Two is, it's extremely critical that that data refreshes rapidly. We reduce the latency. We need to have the speed in our decision making, and in order for the models to update, the data needs to update at the same speed. So before you can begin your journey, we really need to concentrate on how we could remove and bring back the latency of the data. And then the next piece is the accuracy, right? So think about the queries that we run today, think about the reports that we run today, and think about the accuracy of those reports. Today, we might have certain users using Excel coming back with different answers. Today, we might have anomalies in the data if it's not brought in properly. And without that, you don't have trust, right? So right now, you've heard the term garbage in, garbage out. If the data that is coming in to start our AI journey can't be trusted, if it has anomalies, if it has breaks, it's not going to work. So we're going to talk a lot today about the accuracy of the data and how that data is transformed and how that data is centralized to give you that needed accuracy. Now, the fourth piece, and perhaps the most important, is the security. As we start to add different data, and we have diverse data sets coming into one, we need to ensure that there's governance behind the data. Right? Well, the last thing we want is the analyst who says, oh, wow, I didn't know our CEO made this much money, right? And then the other thing we have holding over our heads is PII, SOX compliance, GDPR. So we need governance all the way back to the table level. But as we get smarter and we continue to grow, we're going to want to add additional data into our model. And as that data comes in, we need to make sure that that data follows the same governance policies, which we'll also talk about today. And then 5, probably the most important piece is discoverability. So when we think about our data, we need to make sure that we have the semantic understanding of the data, not just that the numbers are correct. So I'll give you an example. We just did an engagement with a very large CPG. They have 5 different divisions. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to bring all the data across the divisions together to report as a whole. Sounds like a very simple task. Bringing that data together is simple and easy to do. You know, if each division, there's 5 of them, sold 10 units in a month, wow, they now sold 50 units. So in the demo, and the reason that we got engaged is when they did the AI on their own, the CEO said, okay, how many units did we sell last month? And the number didn't come back correctly at 50. Why? Because today's October 29th. And the model didn't understand the semantic of last month. Is last month the last 30 days? Does last month mean the last calendar month? Does last month mean this month to date? And without that semantic understanding, you can't discover the data. And the data doesn't have discoverability to really move at the speed and have the model, more importantly, update at the speed it needs to. And once you accomplish this, right, so this is the foundation to begin your AI journey. You have the most important piece. Your data is now consumable. Now that that data is consumable, you could begin your AI journey, but you could start making decisions and getting answers and moving at a speed that you haven't been able to move before. But you could also have trust in the information that you get back. So how do you get there? Right? That all sounds really great. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that. But how do you get there? Well, how you get there is number one, with an understanding of that JDE data. Adam?
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to a lot of ERPs, but JD Edwards specifically, the table structures, the data, it's just not an intuitive format to make it easy to make sense of what's there, especially when you're talking about AI or just even reporting or analytics in general. So the tables are raw names. You might see something like you see on the screen, F4211. Somebody has to be able to translate. That's the sales table. What's the document number? Well, that's a SDDOC or SDLITM, or the dates are all stored in a Julian format that need to be converted to Gregorian. You've got codes all over the place for category codes or user-defined codes, and those have to require some lookups to find out what's the description for that code. You know, same thing with the decimal precision. You know, at every point in turn, there's something that you have to overcome. And then not only that, even in some of the tables, like the general ledger, you've got an amounts field and a units field. So someone says, oh, okay, yeah, I just need that to start, you know, making sense of it. Well, what ledger type is it determines as an actual versus a budget. What account is it that determines that a revenue versus an expense? So there's all this context. I think that's where most people, once they get started, they know what they want to do, but it just takes a huge monumental effort to be able to overcome all of those challenges and then deliver something that the business actually wants. and is that correlating back to what was initially asked for at the beginning of the request? So that's what makes it difficult for JDE. I'll pass it back to you, Richard.
Great, thank you, Adam. So, you know, I think this slide depicts it perfectly. Adopting AI, leveraging AI, making decisions on AI is the easy piece. But getting it ready and making sure you don't make the mistakes that others can make, or that you don't have the right infrastructure in place, is going to prohibit success. So you might say, well, what is that success, and what is the infrastructure, and what are the tools that are needed, and what is the process needed to get there? Well, I'll review that, and to me, it's broken down into 4 simple formats. One is, what are the pipelines, right? So let's just say, we talked earlier, we all know we want to get JDE data into our model, and we want to take that JDE data and put it into any AI model. But what else is there? Is there data that's needed from HR, payroll, CRM? Think of those applications. What we then do is we create automation, we create the integration, and we take that ETL to take that data and put that data into a centralized data foundation. Now, centralized data foundation is a big word. A centralized data foundation could be a data lakehouse. You guys might, some of you might use Fabric, some of you might use Databricks, some of you might not have a lakehouse today at all, and that's something you'd be thinking of. But the data lakehouse is basically the centralized tool that brings together that data, that allows for modern AI and BI foundation. It allows for all that transformation of the data to come together. And then those pipelines and those automations in that centralized format go to the most important component of your AI journey, your unified data model. And you probably say, well, what is a unified data model? Well, think about today. Today you have, silos in your reporting, silos in your data model. Some people might be using Excel. Some people might be using different metrics. Like most customers we talk to, if we wanted to just look at a gross margin metric, they might have 5 different gross margin metrics, gross profit metric. They might have 6 different gross profit metrics. But if you could think of a data model that unifies all of your data, again, whether it's from JDE or all the other sources, the data model that we put on top of your data contains 3,000 plus measures. And those measures are all now unified. So everyone in the company is now reporting on one gross margin metric. They're operating and they're reporting now on one gross profit metric. And all those user-defined code translations are mapped into one piece. So just, could you imagine now, all the silos are removed, all the reporting is unified, and all that data is unified. Once that's there, that is going to allow for unified reporting. It's going to allow for quicker decision making. And then the data is ported into, again, it's ported into Fabric, it's pushed over to Power BI, it's pushed into whatever format you want, that's going to allow you to make the decisions that you need to make with confidence and with speed. And that is when you can then start your AI journey. So the next thing I wanted to do is turn it over to Adam, who's going to talk to you about, now that the data is unified, now that the model is there, how do we use it? And how do we start our AI journey?
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, so what we're going to do is go through just a couple slides to set the stage for what we're going to demonstrate, and then we'll do a live demo in just a moment. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into a Power BI environment and showcase some of the innate built-in Power BI advanced analytics / AI capabilities that exist just with native Power BI. And so that'll be the first thing. If you go to the next slide, then we'll show how we can use something like Copilot to then start asking questions of the data model with Copilot, and then see how we can get results to help answer questions via a tool like Copilot. And then we can even show a little bit of how we can train some of the results to come back within Copilot. So that'll be the second thing we're going to show. And the last thing is, I'm not going to go in depth on this, but just to show you, we're in this demo and we support a variety of different lakehouse platforms, but Databricks is one of the leaders in AI, and we're partnered there, and have a lot of customers now using Databricks Lakehouse as their platform. They're building some AI functions and capabilities that at the data level, you can analyze the data, and then you can use Power BI to then present that data. So we're going to show you, if you go to the next slide real quick. So we're not going to go in behind the code, but you can kind of, here's a snippet of what's actually running maybe at the lake house to kind of come up with a query narrative. We'll show that in action, where as you drill down on a report and it goes down, typically you're going to have different fields in JD Edwards that are representing some information, and this can kind of write up a more intuitive, user-friendly narrative for people to understand what all these different fields are telling you separately, kind of in one field. And then the next slide. Also, you can have it analyze some set of data and do some predictions. So analyzing maybe last 5 years of data by period or by date for a specific, whatever you want to kind of restrict it or filter it to. And then you can then see what is the AI telling us what that prediction should be, and just representing that in Power BI. So with that, if you want to make me presenter, let me request it. Okay, here we go. And let me know when you see my screen.
We see a screen, Adam.
Thank you. So I'm logged into Power BI in the service, so just in their web environment. And I'm going to navigate to what are called apps. So this would be kind of a read-only view. So some of these things we're showing you can do, not as a designer or editor or report author per se. Some of the stuff you can just do as a consumer. So if I select this QLA Advanced Analytics, it's going to take us to this suite of reports / dashboards. Now, with Quick Launch, what we're delivering is in each of the different, we support 15 modules of JD Edwards. We also support data outside of JD Edwards. We can get into that, but this model happens to be running on top of JD Edwards. And in each subject area, we have sample reports. So GL, accounts payable, as of agings, and operations, maybe sales, purchasing, inventory. We're gonna kind of click through some of these and do some AI in these different areas. But this is where you can navigate. I'm going to go down to looking at another sales report here, and this is just a Power BI report on top of our model, and we're just going to show some of those quick and easy AI features in Power BI. So Power BI, you'll notice here we've got a trend chart looking at some sales by channel trended over time. If I were to go down here and actually right-click on that data point, and I could drill through to the details if I want, or I can do analyze, okay, explain the decrease. So what that's going to do, it's going to look at and analyzing that data, come back and with some insights, right? And that just kind of helps me understand. And you can change the chart if you want. You can kind of come in, and if some of these are really compelling and valuable insights, you can actually train it and say, yeah, give it a thumbs up, and that it'll say, okay, it found that. So then as it's redoing future, it's learning from what's being provided. So that's one example there. Another is, there's this concept of a Q&A. So I can go out here and I can type in a specific question. You can have set up some default questions, or it'll kind of, generically come up with a list on its own. So what is a count of orders by customer as an example? Click on that, it's going to come back with the result, right? You can say, okay, you can even add to this, show this as a pie chart, or you can kind of, very quickly and easily get some insights. And that's just a Q&A function within Power BI. Even over here, you can see, let's say we've got this trend, there is an ability to go in, and if I were to select a specific region, you can kind of see what it's doing is it's using a little predictive forecast that's built into the trend visual within Power BI, where you can go and say, okay, analyze X number of months historically, and then, you know, even hindcast, you say, okay, this blue for these 3 months is the actuals, in orange was actually what it's, you know, was predicting, and then you can so and move forward. So the future might be everything to the right of that last data point there, right? So you can kind of see, you know, our sample data is pretty lean here, but it gives you kind of an idea of some of that predictive capabilities right into Power BI. And then, you know, this isn't really, you know, heavy AI, but some advanced capabilities. You look at gross profit. And if I wanted to go ahead and see this as a decomposition tree, look at the highest values, the lowest values, but let's see analyzed by product group, right? Within maybe computing is the biggest. Let's go ahead and look at that, you know, by customer. So this is just a decomposition tree, new visual they've added, you know, a couple of years ago. Same thing with like a key influencers. So you can use these visuals in Power BI if you're not using it. You know, they come up with monthly updates, and these are all the types of things that are being highly prioritized as capabilities that people are excited about, and you can use right from Power BI. So that's kind of just Power BI kind of in itself. Now let's go ahead and look at maybe with something with Copilot. So I'm going to go back to this GL KPI. So this is in the financial area. I think Richard mentioned we have 3,000 measures and KPIs for JD Edwards across 15 modules: GL, AP, AR, sales, inventory, procurement. I mean, list goes on. These happen to be as part of the financials, the GL, you know, specific perspective, some ratios, right? So current ratio, quick ratio, AR turns, you know, inventory turnover, days payables, right? And so with this, you know, in any report, you might want to see, okay, what's trending there? It's just drilling down, native functionality, just to go in and see that data represented, you know, which may be trending as some charts over time. So that's just Power BI. But if I'm looking at this specific, you know, report, and these are some KPIs compared to prior year. If I open up Copilot, and I'm going to go ahead and drop in, then I'll read this question. So if I go down here and ask a question, so, you know, as a company trying to outperform competitors, what insights can you provide me regarding the financial ratios on this page? Please compare these results to benchmarks for what high-performing technology companies achieve. So if I go ahead and hit, you know, execute on that, now it's going to work on it. It might take a few seconds, and it looks at that data, and it's going to tell me each of those different ratios, and then it's going to give you what the benchmark indicator ranges are. The model that we were providing on top of JD Edwards, which was quick launch, has these KPIs already built in. These benchmarks, we didn't provide any of that information. That question forced Copilot to say, okay, some of this I can build from this model. Other parts of this information, like the benchmarks for technology type companies, I've got to go out there and find that through other sources, you know, in the ecosphere. So, but looking at this, it's kind of good. It breaks down the different types of ratios there with some insights. And then it actually says, okay, what are some opportunities of strengths and what are some areas for improvement, right? And then you can even ask, okay, what specifically could I do to improve the, you know, sales versus working capital, right? Or in this case, maybe I want to see the results, you know, in a table. So I can go down here and say, you know, can you display the results above in a table? So, which is kind of nice. It just basically, you know, retrofit the data and said, okay, yeah, here's the ratio, here's the company value, here's a high performance benchmark, and then each one of those kind of gives you and summarizes, you know, the insight. So again, if I'm a CFO and I've got these reports and dashboards that keep showing up, you know, being delivered to me every month, maybe this is a better way for me to, what can I do to action? What, you know, do I have to go mine all this myself, or can something like Copilot do that for me? So this is one example of a Copilot example. We go down here, let's say I'm looking at another sales report, right? So I'm looking at this, maybe go back to Copilot, and I'm gonna choose understand the data, or, you know, there's all these settings. I can type in a question, but there's, you know, some options. Well, what if I want to prep a summary for my team? Oh, that sounds like a good thing. Let me see what that comes back with. So this is going to analyze the data and then come back and summarize those outliers and bring that to my attention, and then I could ask it more. And some of these things you'll see, like on time in full, right? On time in full wasn't on this page, but it did understand there's underlying elements that are driving some of this, and it finds some of those things and brings back those results. So again, that's the power of having a curated, governed model that already has been validated and returning good results. Having that as kind of the foundation of getting success out of the output of these types of tools. So the next thing I wanted to do was looking at this report. Let's say that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go into the workspace and edit mode so we can kind of show how we can do a little bit of a training of a model. So if I go back to advanced analytics, and I'm going to open up one of our workspaces or our reports here. So that same report we're just looking at. Now, if I open up the report, not in the app, because the app was that kind of read-only interactive view that you have your production reports that people consume and not modify, but if you have the right rights at those workspaces, you can actually edit a report, right? So if I look at, Copilot, and I come here and say, okay, I'm still in read-only, I didn't choose edit mode yet, but I want to say, what are my, what are sales by region? Okay. And I go ahead and hit execute. It's going to kind of analyze the data. And it came back, and you notice here, okay, central sales amount was 1.4, gross profit came back with some other stuff, that's good. And that was actually, you notice here, that's aligning to what was in this chart, but it didn't come back with that chart. It just mined the data that was feeding that chart as well, because it's coming from the same centralized governed model. But what if I wanted, if someone were to ask that question, I want it to come back and bring back this specific bar chart, right? So to go ahead and train the model, they have what's called verified answers. So if I choose edit, and I go to this sales by region and hit the ellipsis here, and you'll notice, oops, just a little delay, set up a verified answer. So if I type in here, what are sales by region, question, right? And I want to add that as a verified answer, and maybe it gives you some other options. Well, what are, highest sales, lowest sales? So you could provide more of other types of questions, but it doesn't have to be these exact questions, right? So it's not like if someone doesn't ask those typed the exact same way, it's still going to make some decisions that's probably what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and choose apply and close. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to come back to the reading view. So now I'm a consumer that might have looked at the same report. Last time when I asked that question, right, it basically came up with a, the summarized data in bullet form, but I want it to be showing me this specific chart. And maybe I don't want to ask the exact same question that I put in there. So I'll say, how are sales tracking by region? So it actually was able to decipher, say, okay, based on what our sales by region and how sales tracking, it was kind of be able to associate that. And so actually you can see it brought back some insights, but also then, the visual itself. So let me go back here. And let me go back. If I would come, when I went to go verify that answer, there was also an option of all verified answers. So you can go back and update prior. So you have, you're learning and you're actually training the model. It's not like it goes into, this black box. You can actually go back and make edits and add more to existing verified answers per se. So last thing I wanted to show was we looked at those couple Databricks advanced analytics functions, and just showing those in action. So for instance, let's say I'm looking at this chart and I've got, here's our top 10 customers, right? I can see that Best Buy is the biggest, drop or variance to prior year. Maybe I want to drill down on Best Buy. Now we actually told this chart to look at what's the product groups, right? Or what's the brands, or so then we drill down into say one specific product group. I can keep drilling down to maybe the product itself or the the SKUs, so the orders and whatever, or we can drill down and drill through the sales order details. Okay, so now this is coming back, and if you think about, this is an AI session, but just from an ad hoc or dashboards visualization type capability, the grain of data that's in these models is the most detailed grain. All of those inquiry screens in JD Edwards is what's loaded into these models, which means you can analyze the data down to the most detailed grain. You can aggregate it up, and then you can drill all the way down to the details like we've done here. Now notice we've got these order numbers. Well, I can even pick on one of these order numbers and I can drill through to the sales order narrative, because this is where we said, okay, let's return the results where it's actually taking a variety of fields, and we've actually said, okay, can you put that into a description? I didn't have to drill through to this. I could have had that down at that prior tab, but I think this kind of gives you that sense of, okay, the sales order line, this specific SKU shows a quantity of this and extended. So and it'll kind of, based on what's in fields and not in other fields, kind of change. It's not just, rinse and repeat the exact same verbiage for every single row per se. So that was one, and the last thing was we did that AI forecast. So for instance, here we can kind of see at the bottom, we've got, these all in blue were, let's say, actuals, and then we said, okay, based on what that forecast, this is what it was trending to be based on what Databricks, that function, was returning. And if I want to look again just at maybe one specific region, right, we could do that. So, it's still dynamically filtering, but now you're getting results that are actually happening at the data level within your lakehouse. So again, wanted to touch on a few different ways of how maybe without too much difficulty, users can start getting exposed and using AI in a fairly easy manner. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Richard.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry for that delay. So thank you, Adam. That was quite interesting. It's amazing to see what users can do already, but also what can happen in the future and how much efficiency is out there. So really what I'd love to key in on is some of the key takeaways for your AI journey, right? So these tools are already there. Adam showed Copilot. I'm sure most of you on the call leverage Power BI today. If you do, Copilot is there, right? It's already embedded in. Two is AI is not just for data science. AI is for an expanded user base, right? So the most important piece is, before we do dive in, make sure you have a unified model. Make sure that data is prepped. But once you're there, every user could use this, right? Everybody's going to have the same results. Everybody's going to have the same metrics. If you're an IT leader on the call today, how nice would it be that you're not going to get a phone call every day, I need an extract, or what about this, right? Where you could create empowerment, right? Empowerment of the data is in the hands of the users through AI. And I really wanted to come back to data prep because we went pretty quickly over it. JDE is not easy. JDE is complex, right? It's about accuracy. Do not, and one of the things, do not begin your AI journey before the data is ready for it, right? And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but if you begin your AI journey and the data is bad, the results are bad, the answers aren't trusted, you're not going to be able to succeed. Take the time to create the accuracy, to create the semantic model, to take all those measures and unify those across the organization. And that's really what we wanted to talk to you about today, is our success has been We go to a customer, we have 3,000 plus metrics that unify instantly across 29 perspectives, 200 plus relationships that data comes together, and it creates that unified data model that then you could start your AI journey. And you could start small. Don't think that you have to start big. You know, a lot of our customers, what they'll do is they'll create a use case, they'll look for a specific department, they'll look for a certain problem they want to solve, and then they can solve it very quickly. They create efficiency. They create the ability to make decisions in a more rapid manner. And all of a sudden, that use case becomes 1, becomes 2, becomes 3. And that's how you start to grow adoption across the company. Now, and again, I would say on the call today, most of you have the tools to begin your AI journey. Just begin by using those tools properly. Make sure the data is prepared correctly. Make sure you have a unified data model. Make sure those metrics aren't all over the place. And make sure there's that magic word, there's trust in your data. And then I would like to just close it up by saying, this isn't easy, right? And we're all in this JDE community together. Let's go create a session together. Book a strategy session. We'll give you a free data assessment and a free overview of your data. Where are you? Where do you need to go? And it's not about, you know, moving forward at rapid speed. It's creating partnerships and helping the community, making sure we all succeed and move forward. The second thing I wanted to highlight is if you go on to the Quick Launch Analytics website, you'll see something called the Power of One. The Power of One is an ebook that we've created for users to begin their AI journey. It talks a lot about connecting the right data. Then it talks about centralizing the data in the right format with your selection of tools. And then it really highlights how you would create that data model to then turbocharge analytics in your AI journey. So that's it from our end. I will turn it back over to Rodney, and I'd just like to say thank you for your time.